Welcome back to Newshour. Before the end of the programme, we'll be hearing about a referendum in Mexico and about the Austrian Chancellor going to Moscow. But let's stick with the French election now. And the question of how Muslim voters in France are going to react to this first round of voting. The projections are, of course, that the far-right candidate, Marine Le Pen, has got through to the second round. And another even further right candidate, Zemmour, has also got some votes. Joining me in the studio is Nabila Ramdani, French journalist and broadcaster. Nabila, let's start with that. 30%, perhaps slightly more, the votes have gone to far-right parties tonight. Does this mean we are seeing a hardening of anti-Islam views in France?
Well, I think so. And dare I say, Mr. Macron has certainly moved to the right himself during his 5 years in office. And he's certainly trying to win over far-right voters. And with the third of the country voting for politicians like Marine Le Pen and Éric Zemmour, he's played his own part in trying to demonize Muslims so as to portray them as the enemy within. I mean, he infamously, for example, told the Financial Times that there were young girls being put in burqas on council estates, which turned out to be completely untrue. So the tropes about Muslim communities living outside mainstream societies have also been rehearsed by Macron in a manner that has caused enormous damage. And on the other hand, Macron has courted the votes of French Algerians by pretending there would be an apology for crimes carried out against Algerian Muslims during the 132 years of French colonization, which ended with the successful war of independence for France. But it's all very typical of Macron, dare I say. He changes his views depending on who he's speaking to. But I guess that's one of the reasons he's such a successful politician.
French Muslims seem to be the sort of subjects of the debate rather than having agency themselves often when you hear about politics in France. But, you know, French Muslims are a broad mosque. I think that's your term, Nabila, you've used. I mean, how do they view their choice, do you think, in this second round?
Well, I think they're acknowledging the reality of the French landscape. And it has to be said that racist sentiment has always been extremely high in France. It's a colonial power that got extremely close to the Nazis during the Second World War. So there's nothing particularly new about any of the racism we're hearing about today, except possibly that it's much more high profile. 24 hours news on TV and social media allows a polemicist who would normally have a very limited audience to go mainstream. And the best example of this is Éric Zemmour, a very high-profile presidential candidate, now out of the race, but who is really not much more than a shock jock, but his ideas are very much progressing within French society. He effectively built his career complaining about immigrants, and he now has 3 criminal convictions for spreading racist hate. And he's an example of how it would have been inconceivable for somebody seeking public office to act like this a few years ago. But with the democratization of international media, it has been made possible. So in other words, France has always been a racist country, but now we are much more aware of it because of improved communication.
Nabila Ramdani, thanks very much indeed.